and welcome to ANC Decides, the show that gives you up-to-the-minute reports, commentary and analysis building up to the December elective conference. I'm your host, Mfundo Mabalani. Now let's take a look at what's making headlines. Cyril Ramaphosa says the country is awaiting President Jacob Zuma to release the Fees Commission report. Ramaphosa casts doubt on free higher education. News reports claim Cyril Ramaphosa leads in early ANC branch nominations, but Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma's camp is certain of victory at the highly anticipated December conference. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma talks radical economic transformation in Davidton outside Johannesburg. ANC race frontrunner Dlamini Zuma is keynote speaker at the Ruth Mompati lecture. Now leading our bulletin, black entrepreneurs are pinning their hopes on a state-owned bank to bring about radical economic transformation. Lemogang Foke filed this report for us.
The South African financial services has for years been dominated by banking giants, limiting competition by closing out other players. This in turn squeezed emerging industrialists seeking access to finance and economic activity.
As the NAFCOC Youth Chamber in Limpopo Province, we definitely do agree with South Africa having its own state bank, because we feel, or we have experienced, that a lot of young people are being locked outside of the mainstream economy. They've become backstaters in the South African economy, partly because of the current banking system that we have in place, whereby the big four banks have, in a majority of cases, always declined the applications and the business proposals of young black people.
Young entrepreneurs often struggle with securing finance due to rigid banking systems and lack of fixed asset to use as collateral.
This is actually a big topic, but as you're talking about our currency, we should focus on that. Do we actually own our own currency? South Africa, we don't own our own currency. So actually, us creating our own bank, that's actually financial freedom towards our economy. That's actually we being free financially towards our economy. Because of now, I would love to be given an opportunity to present a great initiative that we have that could actually help our people, especially if we could focus at township vegetable street vendors.
The proposal for a state-owned bank gives hope to young and black industrialists who want access to the mainstream economy.
It's the high time that the economy of black people must come back to their own hands. And by having that particular state-owned bank, it will be a good a move that will liberate the people of this country, especially the future of this country with the young people.
We strongly believe in the state-owned bank because if you can look at the current development institutions and financing models that exist in the country, they are a bit regressive in the essence that the requirements cannot be met by young people. So a state-owned bank, we believe that it will be able to allow black industrialists to can access that sector of the economy.
In an economy that is barely able to produce sufficient jobs, many have opted for the entrepreneurship route. However, with processes and systems in place in the financial sector, making it difficult for those businesses to progress, a state-owned bank is seen as a solution to have the majority of the people's needs as a priority and to operate differently from private-owned banks. Lemogang Foke, ANN7, Polokwane.
Now we cross over to our reporter Lemogang Foke. Lemogang, a warm welcome to you. It seems that young entrepreneurs really feel the only way they can make a meaningful contribution in this economy is if a state-owned bank is established.
Very good afternoon to you, Mfundo, and thank you very much indeed. I think what we have identified here, Mfundo, is the need to have an establishment of that state-owned bank, and as fast as after the elective conference, we do know that this is a proposal that has been put forward, and some of the young people that we have gone around and spoken to are saying that it is one thing that they're hoping that the ANC's conference will be able to come out and implement immediately. And I mean, in an economy where young people especially are unable to find jobs, the economy barely able to produce the significant amount of jobs that are required. We have more people leaning towards starting and establishing their own businesses, yet it makes it very difficult when you look at the way that the banking system, the financial sector is currently set up, where especially young black industrialists are having challenges in terms of establishing progressive businesses. We spoke to a young gentleman yesterday in Polokwane, for instance, and he was shedding some light on, the process that he had to follow in order to get any kind of financial assistance in order for him to establish his his business, and saying that it took about 6 years. And that just it goes to show you, Mfundo, just the challenges that people are faced with out there. And they're saying that the way in which the state-owned bank needs to operate needs to be completely different from the privately owned banks out there. We do know also when the Competition Commission earlier this year, after probing the financial sector, coming up with those findings of collusion in the industry, they also believe that those kind of things where we have banks in their own operating in a way that benefits only a selected few, having now this state-owned bank come into the competitive market would then allow for free competition, and for most importantly, these majority of people to also come into the economy and be as active as the selected minorities, as we're seeing now. For instance, in Mopani, we're talking to some young people as well there yesterday, and there was a lady who was saying that it is so difficult to get any kind of access into the market as well as a financial assistance, saying that these are big banks, the big giants in the sector, they always push, they close the door on their ideas simply because of the kind of business models that they put forward, and suggesting that the kind of ideas that they have based on what is relative to their economy and would help their economy is basically not even seen as any kind of business model that would progress, and therefore a state-owned bank would be the only solution to have more people participating in the economy, to have a job creation, and to assist basically in achieving radical economic transformation, which is of course a policy of the ANC, which the ANC will be deliberating on in that elective conference.
No, thank you very much, Lemogang. Now, this week we asked ANC members, does South Africa need a state-owned bank to finance black industrialists? Now, here are those results. Now, in KwaZulu-Natal, it was 95% for the yes and 5% for the no to a state-owned bank. And moving on to the Free State, it was 90% for the yeses and 10% for the no. In Gauteng, 80% said yes to a state-owned bank, while 20% said no. Moving on to the Northwest, it was 96% for the yes and 4% for the no. In the Eastern Cape, it's 81% saying yes to a state-owned bank and 19% saying no. In Limpopo, it's 70% for the yes and 30% for the no's. Now, in total, we have 87% saying yes to a state-owned bank, while 13% say no to that. Now, today, to discuss this further, we joined on the phone line by founder of South African Black Entrepreneurs Forum, Lebu Gunguluza, and Transform RSA President Adil Ntshabeleng. Panel, welcome to the both of you.
Thank you.
Now, Adil, perhaps to start with you. Firstly, the significance of this Black Industrialist Program. Talk us through it.
The significance, and good afternoon to the viewers. There is a very strong significance of actually establishing a base whereby black people can access and enter into the mainstream of the economy. And the only way to do so, it is to do with industrialization, as well as micro SMEs, as well as small micro medium enterprises development program, whereby you will take people from a 500,000 to a 50 million to a 500 million base, which is industrial capacity and scale. Black people currently, entrepreneurs as well as business people, as well as service providers currently to government, most of them do not have facilities that they can access with regards to access to credit, access to facilities to build a business, access to facilities to ensure that they have sufficient cash flow to manage, employ, as well as operate efficiently businesses, let alone the aspect of capital. The capital component part of it becomes now a second-tier layer, which excludes black entrepreneurs as well as black people who want to, either as consortiums independently entering into business to going into the industrial space, where they don't necessarily have to participate directly, but the business itself can gain credit and access to financial support in order to grow itself. And that is why we're sitting with currently the challenge where the dominance of capitalist, big, white monopoly capital companies have continued to actually dominate the space. Look at the retail sector. There are various players in the retail sector, but how many of them in the retail sector are currently black? Very few who are actually playing in the sector, except in the township space, which are totally dependent on retail suppliers and wholesalers, as well as distributors and manufacturers. So the value chain process goes very far.
Now, we Adil were defined by colonialist Africans as producers and exporters of primary mineral commodities. Now, there's two problems with that statement. One, our commodities or minerals won't last forever. Secondly, we now know that the final product is more valuable than the raw material that is taken from the ground. It goes overseas, comes back, it's pricier. So we now need to play in that value-added space. But is there appetite from most entrepreneurs to be originators or creators? Because it seems many are saying, I don't mind owning shares. If we can just transfer from white people and I'm a black person, I own shares, just give me my dividends.
Currently, the framework as it stands, the triple BEE framework, actually advantages, as we are talking, white companies that already have capacity, that have the experience, that have the balance sheet, that have the necessary prerequisite, particularly the financial element, as well as the existence in terms of years to participate. If you're a startup black company entering into the industrial space or entering into the space whereby you can produce goods, you can produce services, you can produce solutions, you're most at a disadvantage because why? You don't have a very strong balance sheet, you don't have the necessary prerequisite that the current legislations require. When BEE and framework was written, it was written in favor of white companies that are already existing in the economy and the market who wanted to now continue doing business with government. And as a result, they had to augment the laws to say these existing white companies, what they should do in order to continue being suppliers as well as service providers to government. They needed to augment and open up their companies for black partners to come in and take over ownership and equity, and as a result, they become transformed company. That was the one aspect of it. There was an element of transformation, which was a genuine intent, but it was not necessarily carried out in a genuine truth coming from the industry side of it. The second aspect of it is knowing the history of apartheid, black people were disadvantaged and were refused, by the way, access to becoming industrialists. You can name me any program except if it was in the homelands when they used to give 4 or 5 people in the homelands the ability to become industrialists. The rest of the population was excluded and refused access to manufacturing, access to becoming production managers and owners of industries.
Let's perhaps rope in Lebu. Lebu, your take, I mean, you're in the space of business people most of the time within your forum. Is there an appetite for them to be those creators and originators, and there's not many that would say they just want shareholding?
Yeah, I mean, in any country, you are basically, when you become a shareholder, you're not really necessarily an active player in the economy. You basically just, you're a sideline. Because at the end of the day, it's easy for those guys who are in operation, who are running the organization, even if you're a significant shareholder, it's easy for them to operate the company, hide the money from you, do everything without you knowing, and still make a lot of profit. I mean, there was a case of Dimension Data recently where Mr. Ngaba found out that money was missing because he was a shareholder. He was not as active in the operation. But when you start your own company and you become operative and you understand every aspect of your company as it grows, then you are able to play an active role and understand how your business is growing. But if you are just a shareholder, you have just foreign space and you're getting a salary, and that's what it ends. So it's very, very important that most people must try and start their businesses from scratch so that they understand the entire value chain of their business, so that they can then take full ownership of the space that they're in. Because if you're a shareholder, you actually don't even know the industry sometimes that you're in, because you're a borrowed member of that industry. You're not a real member of that industry. But if you understand the industry very well and you started the business, then you understand all aspects of that industry.
But we've got the likes of Governor Lesedi Kganyago. He seems to be somebody that's opposed to a state-owned bank. He's gone on to actually say that we've got the IDC, we've got DBSA, we've got the South African Post Office, and all of these, to a certain extent, fulfill the mandate of banking, but in various sectors. So why would we still need a state-owned bank if we've got this in the various fields?
Yeah, we do have your CFAs that are supposed to play a role in advancing the cause of entrepreneurship, which is a finance agency. We still have all sorts of structures that their job is to empower. But I think it's the way that is structured that is not having the impact that is required. Because in Swaziland, for example, the Bank of Swaziland, the minute you apply for a loan there, when you are an entrepreneur, they allow themselves to take a risk on you because they know that you learn. And when you apply again, they don't chastise you. They know that you've learned. Even in England, there, you're allowed to borrow money. If you fail, they don't say you've failed, we'll never borrow you money again. They know that you've learned, and they borrow you more money because they know that you make less mistakes. But in South Africa, the minute they say entrepreneur, you make a mistake.
I love that concept of failure. I love that concept of failure where many have been asked, would you invest in somebody who has failed before, or would you invest in somebody that has never failed? Because some would say, I wouldn't invest in the person that's never failed because they're not a realist. They don't know reality, that as a business person, you must rise and fail. But we'll come back to that conversation, especially with you, Adil. But now on to the Free State. The ANC-led Free State provincial government is putting plans in place to make radical economic transformation a reality for the youth. Now, Giovanni Machani filed this report for us.
The Free State government is putting its economic transformation program of action in place, starting with the Botshabelo Industrial Park. The skills development program is in line with Vision 2030 of the National Development Plan.
The intention of driving jobs, creating jobs to improve normal livelihoods is what is at the heart of the National Development Plan, to ensure that people have sustainable jobs and we create sustainable livelihoods.
We have 144 factories here. 122 of them are occupied, fully occupied by business people. The further 13 are going to be taking occupation in the next couple of months. And we are also using some of our facilities for other governmental purposes, like the establishment of an ICT training center, a multimodal gym, emergency centers, and so on, and a call center. So for us, as the FDC, this is many years of hard work.
Premier Ace Magashule is proud of the industrial and skills development work taking place in the Free State, but Magashule also acknowledges how far they still have to go in terms of bringing the youth in the mainstream economy.
We invited mayors, municipal managers, HODs, business people to come and see how black African industrialists can be supported. What is it that we should do as government of the Free State before we complain about national government? We can see that if we want to do radical economic transformation, we ourselves, as the province and municipalities, we should start buying local, we should start supporting local.
The Exco visit to the Botshabelo Industrial Park sees the Free State attending to unemployment and addressing the need of skills development. Giovanni Machane for ANC Decides, Botshabelo in the Free State.
Now, Adil, certainly a very interesting report there, quite impressive what we're seeing. But now, I keep asking the question, we're advocating for radical economic transformation, but the other conversation of transforming the mind, that the economy must meet a transformed mindset, because we still have young people where they seem to be those of instant gratification. They see people in fancy cars, living in fancy homes, and that's all they want. They're saying again still, give me the shareholding and I'll take the money. I really have no appetite to be part of the process. So how do we ensure that as we fight to transform the economy, we've got young people that have also transformed their mindset?
The key solution there is a skills revolution. And that is why we're saying radical economic transformation, because within radical economic transformation, we're talking about now the upskilling of the black people, bringing them into the formal skills requirement economy. Right now, most of the black people do not have necessarily adequate skills, for instance, for the fourth revolution, industrial revolution, and which means that they have to be brought into those industries which will be automated, that will be actually robotics, that will be dealing with digital economy, that will be dealing with advanced science and technology, that will be dealing with biotechnology, as well as all of those things. I mean, this is where the value is created. Anything that is mined today requires engineers, requires scientists, requires people with PhDs, requires people with understanding. Even the distribution of water in cities, if you were to look at the most advanced cities in the world, they have massive engineers who are actually at the PhD level, engineer level. You have economists who have already educated themselves and who have gone through the process of development. You have a highly advanced banking sector, which is based on knowledge-based economy. We don't have that kind of an environment. We're still talking agrarian industrialization from a South African point of view. That is why within the skills revolution, you need to bring in young people. The view that young people do not necessarily have the appetite is actually misplaced. There is already a wave that is happening whereby the digital technology space has transformed the way young people interact. Why are we not actually attaching our skills programs and development and actually start marrying where they are moving in? They already have their own subcultures within that space, the communication space, the groupings that they do, the virtual technology and economy that they are moving around. That's where we should be looking at. So how do you bring a banking environment into that? As you
now
know
let's
today,
take you then to the Governor, Lesedi Kganyago, and him saying that when some are complaining about the oligopolistic nature of the financial sector, he says, yeah, it's centralized, but that's what happens when you have a banking crisis. That other banks then, instead of them going under, other banks buy them. That's why you have the likes of ABSA, where it's amalgamated. That's what it stands for. So they have bought into other banks. So we shouldn't complain about that. What do you say to him and his position on all of this to say, we don't need a state-owned bank?
no, you don't need monopolies in the banking industry. The fact that South Africa came from almost 100 banks at some point in time in South Africa during the 80s, and then when the 90s period started, you started seeing the shrinking of banking industry, where actually ABSA absorbed quite a lot of those things. They used to have building societies. They used to have cooperatives in banking, by the way.
Yes.
They used to have assistance, loan, and everything. They used to have what today is used as stokvels, where actually powerful funds of companies will come together.
But he says they cannot use public resources to bail out those banks. So it only makes sense for the other bigger banks to then swallow these ones.
Most of the current banking industry has been bailed out by the state. If it was not for state accounts, most of them would not be in existence. They would actually be bankrupt. From Standard Bank, ABSA, FNB, as well as Capitec, which is dependent right now on grant-based monies that people, once they end grants, they go back into Capitec industry. So the view that actually the banks right now needs to exist and exist independently, it's a lie. The state subsidizes quite a lot of that, and there's a lot of support that comes from the state. Remember, the banking industry depends on fixed income. The largest pool of fixed income earners in South Africa are coming from the state, which is state employees, about 1.3 to 6 million. And then thereafter is the SOEs. After the SOEs, now you get into the informal sector, and then you get into the private sector, which now houses another sector, a layer of employees who are now in the banking industry. So the view right now that to say banking in South Africa should actually be limited to a few players is quite a misplaced view. The Reserve Bank's role is to regulate as well as maintain the currency, as well as making sure that the monetary regulations are in place and manage the volatility in terms of the currency. Right now, we haven't been seeing that. So the licensing must be actually liberated so that the state bank can come and be used as a lever to start addressing the fundamental challenges around transformation, particularly economic transformation.
And then, Lebo, your closing remarks. I mean, we've seen or heard of 3 bank license applications right now in the past 11 years. And if I'm correct, it's Discovery, and I think it's SAPO, and the last one is from the Commonwealth Bank of Australia. We haven't heard we haven't heard of a grouping of black people saying we also want a license. So your closing remarks on that?
Yeah, that's why I said to you that, it's important, firstly, for the states to have a bank, because I think it is a bank that is biased towards ensuring that black people can access funding and finance easily. That's why you find that most suppliers who supply tenders and all of that have got a division that provides them invoice discounting because most of them run short of money just to finish their project. There's a huge need for that. So factoring is extremely important, and there needs to be a bank that addresses factoring for entrepreneurs because half of them don't have enough money to finish their jobs. And secondly, the gentleman in the studio is correct. We have to open up opportunities for more licenses, especially for black owners, because now we're part of the fourth industrial revolution. And some of us who own fintech companies are way ahead already with this type of banking. I'm launching a bank next year, which is a digital bank. It's called a Challenger Bank. And in the UK, I was there 2 weeks ago. I was part of the Pay Expo. There were about 4 new Challenger banks, which are digital banks. Now, that's the future. The key issue here is to own markets. And Africa has an opportunity to be part of owning markets because we've missed the first industrial revolution, which was machinery. We've missed the second one, which was automation, where you can produce lots of products. The white people have got that. There's nothing we can do to take that away. They produce cars in numbers, they produce cool drinks in numbers, they produce everything in mass. The third revolution was computing. That one we've already missed that because most of the tech companies are already way established, IBMs and everyone. So the opportunity for Africans is in the fourth industrial revolution where we take charge of the mobile environment.
No, it's certainly some interesting developments there. I mean, if black people are doing it for themselves, we can only applaud them. But gentlemen, thank you very much. We've unfortunately run out of time. And that's where we end today's show. Until next time.